Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you look at your garden right now and you feel like August means things are slowing down, I want to challenge that thought for a second. August is not the end of your growing season. For a lot of us, it is actually the start of a second one. Here is why. As we move through this month, the pest pressure that has been chewing through your plants all summer starts to ease off. At the same time, the soil is still warm from months of sun, which means seeds you plant now can pop up and get going fast, sometimes faster than anything you sowed back in spring. A handful of cool season vegetables genuinely thrive in this stretch between the end of summer heat and the arrival of the first real frost. Now, I will be honest with you, this window will not stay open forever. Wait too long, and your plants simply will not have enough time to build strong roots or leaves before the days shorten and the cold moves in. So today I want to walk you through 7 vegetables that are worth your attention right now. We will start with a couple of quick, easy wins, move through some tougher, cold, hardy crops, and finish with one that can actually feed you again as early as next spring. And along the way, I will let you in on something that might surprise you. A few of these vegetables actually taste better once frost has touched them. Not despite the cold, but because of it. If you still have an empty raised bed, a leftover patch of soil, or even a few containers sitting around, this might be your last real shot this year to turn that space into something productive. Before we jump into the list, if you are new around here and you like practical, straightforward gardening advice without a lot of fluff, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what is coming next. And while you are at it, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from today. I always love seeing just how many different climates and growing zones end up in one comment section. All right, let us get into it. Number 1, radishes. If there is one vegetable that belongs at the top of an August planting list, it is the radish. This is about as forgiving and fast as gardening gets. Most varieties are ready to pull in somewhere between 20 and 30 days, and if you go with something like a cherry bell type, you could be harvesting in as little as 20 to 25 days. That is only 3 to 4 weeks from seed to plate. If you are gardening in a colder region, somewhere around Zone 3 to Zone 5, get your seeds in the ground during the very first few days of August. The growing window closes quickly for you, so do not wait around. If you are in a milder zone, somewhere between 6 and 9, you actually have some flexibility. Instead of sowing everything at once, try spacing out your plantings by a week or 2. This little trick, sometimes called succession sowing, keeps a steady stream of fresh radishes coming instead of dumping the whole harvest on you at once. Sow the seeds directly where you want them to grow, since radishes do not appreciate being moved once they start putting down roots. Loose, well-draining soil is what you want here. If the ground is compacted or full of small stones, your roots will come out lumpy and uneven instead of round and clean. Plant them about 1 to 1.5 centimeters deep, and once they sprout, thin the seedlings so they end up spaced 3 to 5 centimeters apart. I know it feels wasteful to pull healthy-looking seedlings, but skip this step, and you will end up with lovely green tops sitting on top of tiny, disappointing roots. Keep the soil evenly moist without letting it get soggy. If it is still hot where you are early in August, try sowing in the evening instead of the middle of the day, and a light layer of mulch will help keep the soil cooler underneath. You will know they are ready when the roots reach about 2 to 3 centimeters across. Just brush a little soil away from the top to check before you pull the whole row. Leave them in the ground too long, and they turn woody, spongy, or unpleasantly hot tasting. Here is the part that might surprise you. As the weather cools down, radishes actually get crisper and milder. That is the opposite of what most people expect, but it is one of the best reasons to grow them in fall instead of only in spring. Number 2, arugula. If you have ever paid a few dollars for a small bag of arugula at the grocery store, you already know it is worth growing at home. One short row of seeds can keep you in peppery salad greens for weeks, and it happens to be one of the best crops for this exact stretch of the year, right as things shift from hot to cool. Arugula does not love the heat. Once temperatures climb too high, it bolts quickly, the leaves shrink, and the flavor turns sharper than most people enjoy. But sow it in August and let it grow through the gradually cooling weeks ahead, and you get something completely different, tender leaves with a much more balanced, pleasant bite. It also grows fast. Baby leaves are ready in around 20 to 25 days, and if you want fuller, more mature leaves, you are only looking at 35 to 45 days depending on the variety and the weather. If you are in zone 3 through 5, get your seeds down early in August so the plants have time to fill out before the real cold hits. In zones 6 through 8, you have most of the month to work with. If you are in zone 9, hold off until late August or wait for the worst of the heat to break. Sow the seeds directly and only cover them lightly, since they are quite small. The soil should stay loose and hold moisture well, though arugula is not picky about needing rich soil. If it is still warm out, sow in the late afternoon and consider a thin layer of light shade cloth for the first few days to keep the surface from drying out. One of my favorite things about arugula is how forgiving it is to harvest. Cut the larger outer leaves and leave the center growing point alone, and the plant will keep producing. Stagger your plantings every 10 to 14 days if you want a steady, rolling harvest instead of one big flush. And keep an eye on moisture, because dry soil is usually what pushes the flavor from pleasantly peppery into overwhelmingly sharp. The best part is that arugula handles a light frost just fine. A few cold nights will not kill it, and honestly, they often soften that peppery edge even further. With a simple row cover, you can stretch the harvest for weeks past the first frost. Number 3, broccoli. Broccoli is not the fastest vegetable on this list, but if you time it right, it might end up being one of the most satisfying things you grow all fall. Here is the catch, though. You cannot just toss broccoli seeds in the ground in August and expect a head to form in time. This is a crop that needs a head start, once transplanted. Broccoli typically needs about 60 to 70 days to form its main head, and that timeline can stretch even longer as the days get shorter and temperatures drop. So if you are in zones 6 through 8, get your transplants in the ground during the first part of August. In zone 5, look for well-developed, fast, maturing transplants rather than starting from seed. And if you are in zone 3 or 4, planting broccoli this late is genuinely a gamble, though if you want to try, get your transplants in as early as possible and keep row cover on hand just in case. Here is the upside to growing it in fall rather than spring. Spring broccoli often struggles with a few unexpected hot days, which can cause the heads to loosen up, flower too soon, and lose that tight, appealing shape. Fall-grown broccoli avoids most of that problem, since the gradually cooling weather actually helps the heads stay firm and gives them a noticeably milder flavor. A light frost will not hurt the plant either, and it can even sweeten things up a bit. Give your plants room, spacing them about 40 to 50 centimeters apart, and keep the soil consistently moist. Broccoli does not appreciate drying out between waterings, and inconsistent moisture usually shows up later as smaller, less impressive heads. A layer of mulch around the base helps a lot here. One thing to watch for is leaf-eating caterpillars, which love brassicas like broccoli. Check under the leaves every so often and remove anything you find. If you want to skip that chore almost entirely, cover your plants with insect netting right after transplanting. When it is time to harvest, look for a head that is still firm, still green, and where the individual flower buds are tightly closed. If those buds start separating or turning yellow, the quality drops fast, so do not wait too long. Cut the main head with a clean knife just below where it forms, and leave the rest of the plant in place. It will often keep producing smaller side shoots for several more weeks, which is basically a bonus second harvest from the same plant. All right, if this list is proving useful so far, this is a good moment to hit subscribe so these seasonal planting guides land in your feed right when you actually need them. And again, let me know in the comments where you are gardening from. It genuinely helps me get a sense of how these timelines might shift depending on where you are. Now, back to the list. Number 4, kale. Kale might be the single most dependable vegetable on this entire list when it comes to handling cold. While a lot of leafy greens give up the moment frost shows up, kale barely notices. In fact, its flavor actually improves as it gets colder. If you want large, established plants to harvest through fall and into winter, start your kale before August, either from seed indoors or by picking up healthy transplants. Look for plants with about 4 to 6 true leaves, sturdy stems, and nothing tall or leggy looking. If you do not have transplants ready, you can still sow directly in August, though you will mainly be growing it for baby leaves rather than a big mature plant. Those baby leaves are ready in about 25 to 30 days, while fully mature plants usually take 50 to 65 days. If you garden in zones 5 through 8, August is genuinely one of the safest windows for kale. In zones 3 and 4, get started as early in the month as you can, or lean on transplants to save time. If you are somewhere like zone 9, the early part of August might still be too hot, so hold your seedlings a little longer or plant them somewhere with a bit of afternoon shade. Kale likes fertile, well-draining soil that holds moisture without staying soggy, so working some compost into the bed beforehand goes a long way. Space mature plants about 30 to 45 centimeters apart to give the leaves room to catch light and air, which helps them grow bigger and stay healthier. Water deeply whenever the surface starts to dry out. Since kale is part of the brassica family, it can attract the same leaf-eating caterpillars as broccoli, so check the undersides of the leaves now and then, or just cover the bed with insect netting from the start and skip the worry altogether. When you are ready to harvest, take the lower, older leaves first and leave the center of the plant alone. That growing point is where all the new leaves come from, so protecting it means you can keep harvesting from the same plant for a long time. If you are in a colder climate, a variety like Winterbur is worth looking into for its excellent cold tolerance. If you would rather get an earlier harvest of more tender leaves, Red Russian is a solid pick. And here is the payoff. Cold weather triggers kale to convert some of its stored starch into sugar, which is exactly why kale picked after a few frosty nights tastes noticeably sweeter and more tender than kale grown in the middle of summer heat. Number 5, carrots. Carrots ask a bit more patience from you than radishes or arugula, but the reward is worth the wait. A fall carrot crop is genuinely one of the sweetest things you can grow, and if you protect it properly, you can even leave it in the ground and pull carrots gradually all winter instead of harvesting everything at once. Carrots typically need somewhere around 60 to 75 days to reach a good harvestable size. If you are in zones 6 through 8, get your seeds sown at the start of August so the roots have enough runway before the days get too short. In zone 5, sow as early as you can and lean toward faster maturing varieties. If you are gardening in zone 3 or 4, August is honestly a bit late for full-sized roots, though you can still pull baby carrots if you get seeds down quickly. Sow directly where you want them to grow, since carrots form a taproot early on, and transplanting tends to leave you with bent, forked, or oddly shaped roots. Loosen your soil ahead of time to a depth of at least 20 to 25 centimeters, and clear out any rocks or hard clumps, because compacted soil is usually the reason carrots come out twisted instead of straight. Sow the seeds shallow, about half a centimeter to a full centimeter deep. The tricky part with carrots is germination, which can take anywhere from 10 to 21 days. During that stretch, the soil surface needs to stay consistently moist, since seeds that have already started sprouting can die if the top layer dries out. Once your seedlings are a few centimeters tall, thin them so they end up spaced about 5 to 8 centimeters apart. Otherwise, the tops will look fine, while the roots underneath stay small and crowded. You can harvest carrots anytime once they reach the size you like, and pulling the largest ones first gives the smaller roots more room to keep developing. If you would rather leave them in the ground longer, wait until the roots are close to full size before the ground freezes hard. If you want quick, sweet results, Napoli is a great choice. If you are more interested in something that stores well over time, Bolero is worth considering. Here is the detail that makes fall carrots special. Cold temperatures push the plant to convert some of its stored starch into sugar as a kind of natural protection against the chill, which is exactly why carrots pulled after several frosty nights taste noticeably sweeter. In the right conditions, you can genuinely be digging fresh carrots out of the garden in the middle of winter. Number 6, beets. Beets are one of those crops that quietly give you more than you expect. You get 2 harvests out of a single planting, since both the roots and the leafy tops are perfectly edible. The greens can be cooked much like spinach or chard, and even the seedlings you thin out along the way can go straight into a salad. Beets take a bit longer than some of the other crops here, usually around 50 to 60 days to reach a good-sized root, though the leaves themselves can be harvested much sooner. If you are in a milder zone around 6, sow at the start of the month so the roots have time to develop through the cooler weeks ahead. In zone 5, Sow as early as possible and choose a fast-maturing variety. If you are in Zone 3 or 4, the fall season may be too short for large roots, but you can still get a solid harvest of baby beets along with their greens. Sow the seeds about 1 to 2 centimeters deep. Something worth knowing about beet seeds is that each one is actually a small cluster containing several embryos, so do not be surprised when 2 or 3 seedlings pop up from a single spot. Once they reach about 5 to 8 centimeters tall, thin them down, keeping only the strongest seedling in each cluster, and toss the rest into a salad or a quick stir-fry. Water deeply whenever the top layer of soil starts drying out, and a light layer of mulch will help keep things consistent. Beets do best with steady moisture rather than long dry spells followed by a heavy soak, which can actually cause the roots to crack. If you want a dependable classic, Detroit Dark Red is a great place to start. If you like a bit of visual flair on the cutting board, Chioggia gives you those distinctive red and white rings when you slice it open. The reward here is simple. Cooler growing conditions bring out a natural sweetness in beets that you just do not get from a summer-grown crop, making this an easy win for very little extra effort. Number 7, spinach. I saved spinach for last on purpose, because its value does not stop with a single fall harvest. Get the timing right, and this plant can actually survive winter and come back to give you one of the very first harvests of the following spring, well before anything newly sown has even sprouted. Spinach genuinely prefers cooler weather. Lower temperatures help the leaves grow thicker, more tender and sweeter, and a light frost usually does no harm at all. If anything, it tends to push the plant to convert some of its stored starch into sugar, which is why fall-grown spinach often tastes milder and more pleasant than a summer crop. Baby leaves are ready in about 25 to 30 days, and fuller, more mature leaves take around 35 to 45 days, though growth naturally slows as the days shorten later in the season. The trickiest part with spinach is getting it to germinate in warm August soil, since the seeds tend to struggle once the soil climbs above roughly 24 to 27 degrees Celsius. If you are only seeing a few seedlings pop up despite keeping the soil moist, warm soil is usually the real culprit rather than bad seed. If you are in zones 3 through 5, sow from early to mid-August so plants have enough time before the days get too short. In zones 6 and 7, you have from the middle to the end of the month to work with. In zones 8 and 9, hold off until late August or early September once nighttime temperatures start to cool down. Sow directly, since spinach does not like having its roots disturbed. The soil should be loose, rich in organic matter, and able to hold moisture without staying soggy. Space plants around 10 to 15 centimeters apart if you're growing for mature leaves, and harvest the outer leaves first, leaving the center intact so the plant keeps producing. If you want a variety known for surviving winter well, both Bloomsdale Long-Standing and Winter Bloomsdale are solid, reliable choices with good cold tolerance. Here is why spinach earns the final spot on this list. With the right timing and a bit of protection through the coldest stretch, it can sit quietly through winter and burst back into growth the moment days start lengthening again, giving you fresh spinach leaves weeks before a spring-sown bed would even think about germinating. So there you have it, 7 vegetables that prove August is far from the end of the gardening year. Some of these, like radishes and arugula, will have you harvesting within a few short weeks. Others, like kale, carrots, and spinach, ask a little more patience but pay you back with flavor that only gets better as the weather turns colder, and in spinach's case, a head start on next spring as well. You do not need to plant all 7 at once. If you want the fastest, easiest results, start with radishes and arugula. If you are after something with longer-term value, kale, carrots, and spinach are well worth the extra effort and patience. So tell me, which of these 7 are you planning to try first? And if you have already grown one of them before, share which one gave you the best harvest. I would genuinely like to know. And as always, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. It is always interesting to see just how many different climates and growing zones show up down there. If this video helped you plan out fall garden, consider subscribing so you catch the next planting guide as soon as it goes up. Thanks so much for watching, and here is to a green, productive garden no matter what season it is.